Great. So I think it's about time. Yeah, let's wait for a couple more people to settle down, and we will get started. So, awesome. All right. Yeah. Thank you for attending. Again, my name is Dmitry Vinnik, and today we will talk about stress-driven development and how to avoid it. As I've mentioned, this talk is not about stress testing your software. It's more about stress testing your personal life and your professional life as well. So, let's first and foremost define our goals today, so you can actually make a quick choice whether this talk worth of your attention or maybe the other talks would be also more interesting. Okay, so the goals are fairly straightforward. First, I always like to establish the understanding what the stress is, because we usually fear something that we don't really know. Then I would discuss a couple of practices and approaches to tackle stress in the first place, and hopefully by the end of today I would establish some practices and give you some tips and tricks how to actually get those improvements stick, and so you can actually move forward addressing the stress in the first place. All right, so let's actually get started with the stress itself. And when it comes to the stress, you still might be asking yourself, why should we even talk about it? Maybe it's not even a concern. And it's always easier to start by looking outside and look externally and see if it's still a problem out there. And there are many examples out there. One, it would be the infamous letter from an Electronic Arts employee spouse. But you can see that it's been quite a while since this letter was published. Basically, her husband been overworked, he worked long hours, and it affected their personal life, his career, and his health, and health of his entire family. Unfortunately, that issue hasn't just stopped back in 2004. This is a more recent, but with a different company, where, again, rockstar employees who worked on a GTA release have been working overtime over and over again, and their wives basically made that collaboration and send a letter to the employer saying, can you please take into the account their health. And more recent thing from 2018, just a couple months ago actually, or months ago I would say, the gaming company Telltale, they behind titles like Walking Dead, Batman, and I think Wolf Among Us, but basically they laid off majority of their employees, I think by now all of them. And this is one of the engineers of the team who basically said something fairly obvious for all of us, but that, work is not everything. It's all about you. It's all about your health. Everyone is replaceable. And if you think otherwise, you're just fooling yourself. So it was still kind of nice to see that now he found a new work placement. But anyways, it shows you the issue is still out there. And the thing is, there are many more cases externally. But I would also invite you to think internally as well. Like, has any of your colleagues experienced stress to the point of the meltdown? Anyone in your family, or maybe you yourself? And I feel like, it's a ninth slide, and we're kind of bonded by now. And I actually like to share my own story with the stress. So hopefully, if I open up, it kind of gets you start thinking about your own experiences. So, in my early 20s, I've been working a lot. I've been doing my full-time school and full-time work, and also I've been immigrating to Canada at the time. But then the fall of 2015 came in, and something felt off that evening. I've been in my kitchen trying to prepare the dinner, and I felt that left side of my body went numb to the point where I couldn't move it. I couldn't feel anything. So my response was, it felt, even though I'm fairly young, it felt like a stroke, for God's sake. And so what I've done, I tried to call the emergency department. And the thing is, it was so bad that I couldn't even, my speech was slurred, so I couldn't tell them my address. So it was very, I would say, unwanted experience, to say the least. It wasn't very pleasant. But I would actually say it was somewhat beneficial. And the reason why I call it beneficial experience, because it was a great motivator. And motivators is what invite us to address those stressors in life. And for me, again, it was a fear, because when you talk to the doctor and they tell you that's actually a sign that you're doing something wrong, if you haven't realized it yourself, it can be, again, fear of death, low quality of life. Another thing is, some people find the purpose in life that changes. For example, with birth of your kids, you really start looking at life differently, and it motivates you to change your daily routines. The religion and communities they help you to change your routines as well and try to address those stressors. They are the great motivators. Even if it's just two of you, it's already a community of two of you, and you can actually change your life for the better. So, I hope we kind of established the motivators are out there, and I hope you don't have to experience the thing I've just mentioned yourself and just learn from other people's examples. But with motivators in place, what do we do now? And it's always good to identify what the problem is. We can't just say stress as a whole is bad. Saying that stress as a whole is bad doesn't make much sense. The reason why I'm saying that is because nature, by default, is actually smart. If stress was useless and just, unnecessary, then we would not have stress in the first place. So, it's very famous, this phrase, fight or flight response. If you think back to our ancestors, if there was a predator in the woods, you have to make a quick decision whether I want to run or fight the animal. When it comes to sleep, quick sleep deprivation, your body is also capable to respond to. Because if you're trailing an animal for many days in a row and you don't have a chance to sleep because otherwise you don't eat. And it really comes down to even hunger. The reason why we store fat for future is because the body responds to stress of you maybe not eating or dieting at some point, and it thinks, okay, dieting means I'm food deprived, maybe the hunger days are coming, let's store it for the later on. So stress makes sense. There is a reason for stress. So, but again, if it makes sense, why do we feel so bad sometimes? It's again because stress not equal. There are different types of stress, and one type would be short-term, or sometimes people call it acute stress, to the point where this is useful. Things like heat therapy, for example, sauna, or cold shower in the morning, those are great for you. They get your body going. It's just like a Kickstarter for your machine, for your engine. Those are great. But the long-term stressors, that's what you need to avoid, because they deprive you of your life energy, and as a result, that's what causes you that long-term effect on your body and your health deprivation. So what is the conclusion, though? The conclusion is simple, is that you need to be incorporating more of those short-term stresses in your life when necessary, like, again, the heat shock or, like, again, cold showers in the morning. And you need to be trying to eliminate the long-term stressors. So, but it's easier said than done, right? You probably have heard this many, many times in the past. But I would say there is an old good trick that we all know how to tackle any problem. To tackle it, it's best to divide and conquer. So if I were to talk about grounds for stress that we all encounter, there are at least 4 of them that I always like to summarize. As sleep is the first area where we can have stressors, and as a result it will affect our entire life and daily routines. The nutrition, what we eat, this fitness, whether it's physical or mental, and last but not least, of course, is work. It's probably something we spent quite a bit of time doing. So, but the thing is, I don't like thinking in negative terms, so let's approach it from the perspective of it being an opportunity, the grounds for anti-stress that we can actually tackle and think of. So, let's start with sleep. You might be asking yourself, why do we even need to talk about sleep? And I would reply, do you really need the reason? I would love to have some sleep right now. Some small nap after lunch would be just great. But imagine you're still questioning the reasons for sleep, and I would have to highlight a couple. And by the way, when I say sleep, I mean healthy sleep, which I also would discuss in more detail later on. So, reasons to sleep. Depression is proven, scientifically proven, to be one of the being caused by lack of sleep as well, along with some long-term diseases like Alzheimer's disease or even cancer being caused by consistent sleep deprivation over and over. Being underslept would affect your life. And if you actually have a healthy sleep, your creativity will improve, which is essential for developers and designers, or for that matter, I would say most people, if not all. And it would improve your memory significantly. During the sleep is when the memory is actually flashed, to say in simple terms, and you memorize stuff. There is a reason why we say sleep on this problem. It's because during the nighttime, processes happening, you memorize and you analyze things a lot better. So, if you still need convincing whether you need to sleep or not, there is a great book I would recommend. And by the way, I would share the slides. All the links would be there. Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. He's currently a sleep scientist at Google, but he's been a scientist in the sleep industry for a long time. Great book. Would convince you, whoever you are, that sleep is essential. So, it's all great. Now we know why we need to sleep, but how do we need to sleep? How do we sleep in the first place? What do I mean by saying healthy sleep? So the path to healthy sleep, it's not that complex though. There are some things you need to just avoid and implement. Light and noise pollution is really something you need to be avoiding. Basically, things like, blue light, you really need to try to tackle. For example, if you have an iPhone, in the evening, try to make sure you have a night shift on, so it dims the lights. I use the Linux laptop. I installed the red shift, so lights, again, are dimmed. There are special glasses, Felix glasses, it's called. People wear during the night so they don't get, exposed to those blue lights. The same goes for the noises. If you go to sleep, make sure you use some, noise protection, like even earplugs, because you want uninterrupted sleep. And again, you want to control your environment. If again the lights are, shining on you, or you're traveling, you want to try to prevent those from affecting your sleep, because you want to get those 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. That's essential. 8 hours would make a huge difference. And again, the constant wake up, by the way, wake time is essential as well. Things happen, we not always get those 8 hours, but even if you go to bed later, try to still wake up at the same time. So, if you need more suggestions and steps how to make your sleep better, this book by the sleep coach, he's been training, I believe, Manchester United and UK cycling team, many other sports athletes. Nick Littlehales, I believe his name. Great book on sleep and how to sleep. So, sleep is off the way. The nutrition is the next major step you have to tackle. And again, you've all heard this phrase that you are what you eat, but it's so true though. So with nutrition as a whole, obviously we all differ, but there are some nutrition tips that I like to follow myself and implement in my life. Diets are the worst. You really should avoid diets in the first place. When you follow something by the book, you're really ruining yourself. I've mentioned you the stressors and how we, deprive ourselves of food, and then it ends up you going back to your weight and even overeating. The studies have shown that it's crazy numbers. I believe like over 90% after 10 years of giving up on a diet, they would eat their way back to their original weight and then some. Weights would not make you any good. Moderation is what you need to go for, and experimenting with your body. Because we're all unique. If you hear keto, it might not work for you. Find what works for you best. Try to experiment, but consult with a professional as well. You might have some health conditions as well. But sugars are particularly something that I would say in general avoid. Carbs and sugars is what affects your daily routine the most. The reason why you get so tired in the lunchtime, it's because of you get the sugar rush, or in the morning you feel like you have to eat as soon as you can. It's again because of your spikes of insulin. You would be surprised how different your routine would be if you just cut on that. And eat more greens. I know it's kind of simple, but really, if you have a hard time, incorporating greens in your life, use a mixer. There is a great mixer by the company Nutri-Life, I believe. It's called Magic Bullet. If you don't like broccoli, if you just put it in the mixer, it doesn't look the same, but you can actually, savor it a little bit. But the thing is, key to food control in the first place, to the moderation, is something called intermittent fasting, which probably you've heard of because it's been a new fad lately. So it's something what people like to follow, a thing called 16-8 model. If I were to give you an example, what basically people do is they eat from noon to 8 p.m. or from 1 to 9 p.m. or whatever works best for you. And they just, in the middle they don't eat. So basically it's as simple as skip breakfast and sleep, because during the sleep you don't eat, hopefully. So basically it's simple, but the thing with the intermittent fasting, what I like the most, that stuffed feeling is disappeared, because you don't constantly feel like you're full. You start enjoying food, you start appreciating it, and you don't have to eat for the sake of it, because it's like, oh, it's 9 o'clock, it's time for breakfast. You eat when you want to eat. And studies have shown that the fasting itself affects mitochondria, which ultimately is what helps with the longevity studies. So the thing, though, with intermittent fasting, I just been in Ireland a couple of weeks ago, and I've been sitting next to the guy on the bus. And he told me, oh yeah, you know, I do fasting. I fasted for 3 days before coming to Ireland so I can drink and eat as much as I can. That approach is not going to do you any good. When you just fast or diet for a particular event, you actually going under even more stress for your body. So consistency is the key. And some podcasts on health I'd like to recommend. Ben Greenfield is a great resource for fitness and dieting and any food advices. Model Health Show, even though it sounds kind of somewhat pretentious, I would say, but the name at least. In reality, the hosts are great, and they talk with the nutrition professionals, not like myself. They've been studying these things. So you probably, again, heard these nutrition rules or tips before, but the thing is, while they sound easy, and I understand that, they're difficult in practice. And the thing is to tackle those new routines, it's to approach, again, remember, nature is smart. There is a way to tackle those routines. And the way to do it is through habits. And habits are actually fairly simple. You can utilize them. They all follow the same rules. The habit loop. The habit loop, again, is so simplistic. Every habit has a cue. It has the routine itself. And it has the reward. Apologies for my drawing. It's not very loop, but I've tried my best. But in reality, you're trying to tackle the routine while utilizing the same cues and reward. A good example I've read about in a paper recently where a lady, she was biting her nails really hard all the time, and she went to a psychologist. So they went through this habit loop analysis, and she realized that she felt pressure in her nails. That's a cue. Routine, she was biting her nails, and the reward, she felt satisfied that she finished biting her nails. So what they've done is when she felt pressure, she put her fingers and her arms in her pockets. So instead of biting them. So routine has changed. But the reward, satisfaction, still stayed there. So don't try to change your nature. Try to build on top of that. And it will help you to change your routines. So hopefully now you see that there is a way to change and you're ready for a change. But it seems to be a lot of information. I only talk about 2 areas, and I will talk about a lot more other stuff. The thing is, there is something called Keystone Habits. Keystone Habits, it's something that if you stick to, it will affect your entire behavior. Fitness is a great example. As you start exercising, it will change your other areas of life. How you eat, how you go to work, your productivity, everything. That's what Keystone Habits are for. They are built on top of small wins. If you're trying to be more productive and you do those to-do lists, every time you check a checkbox on the next to the item you planned for, you feel good about yourself. Feeling good about yourself is a good way to tackle stress, and it sets you in that positive route, and you don't feel as depressed anymore. And it sets that ripple effect that affects other areas of your life. So, and again, there is a great book on habits. I highly recommend it, The Power of Habit. It talks about individual habits and habits for the organizations. So, those were just the 2 points, the nutrition and the sleep. But let's look at fitness. And when I say fitness, again, I mean physical and mental. Both are as important. When I talk about physical fitness, I have to discuss, again, the fact that it's Keystone Habit. You have to make it vary from time to time. You need to integrate it into your daily routines, but it also provides you credible flexibility into your daily life and how you tackle the stress in the first place. Again, as I've mentioned with a Keystone Habit and fitness to be a habit, try to identify your triggers. Some people prepare clothes for the morning run a day before, they put it next to their bed, so there are no excuses. You have that cue in place. Identify a reward, establish the rewards, gamify your workout. After workout, I want to get a smoothie or, have a pancake or something. Always do that, like have some reward in mind. It will help you immensely. But established goals. Some people sign up for a marathon and train for it. First time in their life, and it really helps you to achieve something. And last but not least, find the community. Exercise with the buddies at work. I started running, jogging with my colleagues in the office. It's a great experience. You kind of bond on a different level. But be careful again. Don't overdo it. Moderation is essential. It's like you can run a marathon without training, but then you're going to be in the bed for the next couple of weeks. You want to avoid that. About gamification, though, there are a couple suggestions I give. Strava is an awesome app to gamify your workout and to give kudos to others. MyZone Tracker gives you points for certain exercises, and just any wearable device, it gives you like, congrats, you did the 10,000 steps today. So gamify your life, though. It's somewhat handy. The variations in fitness are also essential to make it more enjoyable. Again, acute stress, that short-term stress, will help you to deal with the stresses at work or any long-term stresses. Do the cold shower in the morning, go to the sauna after the workout or before workout, whatever you prefer the most. It will help you significantly. You will feel better, indirectly or directly. Vary your cardio as well. Don't just run every day. Do some spin classes. To go just for a walk. It really helps, but make sure you buy good equipment, invest into yourself, don't hurt yourself. And the very focus of your exercises as well, different body parts and the muscle types would determine that you have to do different types of exercises. And make sure that you give yourself some rest. Don't impose too much stress. You need some stress, because again, to grow muscles, you have to break them first, but don't overdo it, as I've mentioned. And last but not least, yoga. Yoga is great. It's in between, physical and mental fitness. It's like it's not just stretching. It really gets you into the zone. I highly encourage you to try. Don't have any misconceptions. Just go ahead and attempt a couple of classes. They really help significantly. And I'll bring it back at this point later on as well. Integrate your workout. With a commute these days, try to make it active. Bike to work. Scooters are all over town. Even I believe in Prague as well. Try to use a scooter when you go to work. It also helps. But what I've noticed? Mark it in your calendar. I have a 12 to 1:30 block every day, so I know that in that lunchtime I would go exercise, go for a run, go for yoga, or something like that. Treat it as important of a meeting as any other meetings you would have. That's actually important. Other meetings can wait. Desktop rotation. Don't be that person who says sitting is the new smoking. You can use a standing desk. Sometimes you might use a sitting desk, fitness ball. Treadmill desks are also awesome. I love taking long meetings on a treadmill desk because I want it to be over as soon as possible. So I'm like, let's just get over with. So it's really nice to interchange that. And have a boredom plan. The reason why we often overeat at work with snacking is because, again, that habit loop, the cue is you actually bored. The routine, you do and go snacking. And the reward, you spend time. Replace the routine. Go for a walk with your buddies. Or also mark when do you feel that way. Most likely it's around lunchtime. Always just schedule that lunchtime walk with your colleagues. And last but not least is the idea of flexibility of fitness. Morning routine, just do some body weight exercises will set you for the entire day the positive outlook that I've achieved something. That small win from the get-go will help you immensely with your entire day. Workout and travel is also important. Many of us have to travel to the customers for work, especially in Europe because everything is so close. People travel a lot, especially on the planes. One thing I've noticed for myself, if you go somewhere, first thing, as soon as you drop your bags in a hotel or Airbnb or wherever you're staying, go and exercise. Go to the gym. If there is no gym, do some, the bodyweight exercises. Go for a run. There is always a place to run. Because otherwise you would postpone, you would never do any exercises whatsoever, and you feel even worse. Exercises will give you even more energy. And if you actually just travel for fun, active sightseeing is amazing. Walking tours, biking tours are always great. Bus tours make me quite sad because you put even more strain on your back, and sitting too much is always bad for you. So we've talked about physical, but mental is not any less important though. It's really essential for your stressors and how you deal with them. With mental fitness, you can also think of it as mindfulness. When I talk about mindfulness, there is an issue which I also had myself, because you think of some CEOs of fancy startups sitting in a room and talk about mindfulness and openness and so on and so forth. The time when I actually understood what mindfulness meant, when I was at the end of my run, and I was listening to the audiobook, and the speaker mentioned what mindfulness is, which is basically being in the moment. Because it was the end of my run, I was so tired, I had nothing in my head. And I was able to actually stay in that moment of running. And I looked around and I saw beautiful Vancouver where I live. I saw people, I saw myself running. Then you understand how to be in the moment and how to focus. It really helps immensely. You need to clear your mind. You need to control your emotions. Embrace the solitude. And last but not least, meditation is also important. So when it comes to clearing your mind, there is a consistent information overload these days. Too much data, too much information. You have to take care of it some way or another. But avoid information dump. You don't want to have hundreds of notepads throughout your house or workplace with different to-dos all over. Make sure you have a single source of truth. Have a single app that you use or single notepad that you have where you actually have your items that you will tackle today or tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Because having more notebooks will enforce more stress. You want to avoid stress. And again, avoid multitasking as well. Single focus is what's important today. Multitasking has been debunked as being productive. If you're looking for a book, there is a different way to look at life a little bit. This is a great book, though. I would highly recommend it if you need convincing to, free your mind a little bit. So, the emotions, though. Emotions, again, drive our life. I just had to show this. I saw it just, I think, a day before I arrived to this conference. But Jeremy Ashkenas, he posted on his Twitter this picture and the comment. Jeremy is the creator of CoffeeScript, Backbone.js, Underscore, and so on. A great guy. But the thing is, so he posted this picture of him enjoying sun and diving into water, and someone was so nice to leave this great comment below his picture. Such a great appreciation of open source contributor. So, if you think of it, there is never a reason to be rude. Never. It doesn't help anyone. Yes, I live in Canada, but it's still, you don't have to be rude anywhere else, So there is never a reason for that. Art of unsent letters is actually amazing. Abraham Lincoln was known for, when he was angry with someone, before going and confronting them, he would write down all the anger, like, you've done that, it was a bad decision, so on and so forth. So after he dumped all his anger on the paper, he didn't send it. Then after a while, when he spoke to the person, he was able to have the clear judgment, clear head to discuss an issue at hand. Emotions just will stay in a way. Again, but also sometimes it's important to move away from focusing on what needs to be improved in your daily routines or what you've done, and instead focus on successes. Think of, oh, I've done that well. That part of the project was great. Let's discuss that as well. And be proactive with your feedback. Tell people that you appreciate them. Tell them that they have a talent, especially junior engineers. It will help them. It will change their life. They will remember that. I still remember a first architect who acknowledged my work. It was amazing. I still remember the person's name. It's great. But they would appreciate that. Kobe O'Brien, famous basketball player, he was known that when he was 11 years old, he scored a 0 game. His father, who's also been a basketball player in the past, he didn't berate him. He actually encouraged him to grow, and continue practicing. And now we hopefully know who Kobe O'Brien is to some extent. So, some suggestions beyond this talk, of course. There is a great discussion by Brett Cannon. He's a part of a Python community on kindness in open source. And he did the podcast recently with Changelog. Encourage you to listen. It's a great guy. Lives in Vancouver, by the way. So, you can see the pattern, rudeness and stuff. And so, about the solitude as a whole, the art of solitude. Try to have some quiet moments with yourself. For that, I really like float therapy. It's an amazing tool. It's basically that sleep. It's a sensory deprivation capsule. You go in, you lay in the salt water for 90 minutes. You don't hear, you don't see anything, and you actually get to, first time in a long time, actually stay with yourself and think, what am I doing, and can I actually be alone at all? The reason why you have to understand and appreciate solitude sometimes, because if you don't want to learn about yourself, why would anyone else want? And more importantly, it lets you make clear judgments. Maybe you don't want to leave your job because you don't want to feel lonely, because there are so many friends of mine there, right? Or you're in not the best relationships, and you're afraid of solitude. When you realize that it's okay to be alone, you can make a judgment call much, much clearer. So, last but not least, meditation. Meditation really changes people's approach to work and overall daily routines. Unguided meditation is one of the approaches. Guided meditation, however, is something I would recommend people to start with, and I'll give you a couple of tips on that. But basically, they will tell you how to breathe and how to focus and clear your mind a little bit. Active meditation is if you just go for a jog, it's a great way to stay with yourself and meditate a little bit while running. But consistency is a key. They always recommend you 10 minutes a day, at least. And Tony Robbins, a famous public speaker, he says, if you don't have 10 minutes for yourself, you don't have life. Everyone has 10 minutes. You can find 10 minutes in the morning or in the evening or whenever. So, don't make excuses there, please. So, if you need help getting started, there are some apps. Headspace is awesome, especially even the free part really teaches you how to get started with meditation. There are some other apps like Relax Meditation, Calm, and many others, but the Headspace is great for starting with a guided meditation in the first place. If you're still skeptical of meditation, and it's totally understandable, I also was, there is a book by Dan Harris who had a meltdown as a reporter on the Good Morning America. And then after many years after that, he found himself doing some meditation, incorporating it into his work. One thing he really makes it clear for you, it's not about religion connecting to the meditation, it's just about yourself. So it doesn't have to be, certain religious, followings. You can do meditation on your own, regardless of your, views. So, work is basically something something we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And some of the sources of stress I'll talk about is the office environment, communication, distractions, and project plannings. The office environment, let's begin with that one. Office and you. Open office, I'm terrified of that. It's, when you feel open office is not for you, and many people do, hence, if you think about it, often most of our job is done better from the cafeteria or some Starbucks or from the plane even. And there is a reason for that. Sometimes when you think of office perks, when, if you stay late, you get a dinner, avoid that. In reality, it's actually office bribes to some extent. When you go to work, apart from everything else, you trading your life energy, your time, for the money. We all have the expiration date. There is a due date at the end. And when you go into work, you're making a commitment. So think about it. If they bribe you to give them more of your energy, make a good decision there, whether you want it or not. And again, as I mentioned, sometimes you get to do more work from the plane. Why is that, I wonder? So consider maybe remote work. And there is a great talk after this on remote work, by the way. And again, work is just work. As I've shown you before with those different tweets, and you probably know yourself, everyone is replaceable. And there is a great book on remote as well, which I'll recommend. So, the communication is essential, whether it's work, life, or anything else. Try to emphasize not the synchronous communication, but asynchronous communication. The problem with instant messengers these days is because people really confuse the reach time, that they can instantly ping you, with the response time. If they can ping you right now, it doesn't mean you have to reply ASAP. Emergencies should be unique. They can call me, and God forbids they would call me, that if there is something happening, the warehouse is burning. I don't know how I would help, but still. Set expectation, that's what's important. If they expect you to reply right away, make sure they don't. You can ignore them at that particular time when they ping you, but don't forget about them. That's important, by the way. Don't just skip the message. Get back to it. And make sure that you have understanding with whoever you're working with that you will reply within a day or a week, depending on what priority of the message is. And sometimes what helps is set names to faces. If you have a messaging app, or especially if you work in a different time zone, make sure you have your picture as an avatar, not just a set of blocks. If you have actual real call, have a webcam on. It helps quite a bit. Because people put that human component in place, even with that communication. Distractions. Distractions are tricky. Mobile devices, I'll talk about. The noise control, setting boundaries, and last but not least, getting into the zone. I'll talk about all of them in more details. Mobile devices. So before, my phone looked something like that. It gives me an anxiety to just see these bubbles, these red bubbles of notifications. It's really frustrating and terrifying. So what my phone looks like now, something like that, and I really enjoy that. The fact that, I have no emails whatsoever here. My emails would be on a second, never on the main screen of my phone. My apps would be grouped to the weird point, I would say. And also, I really, emphasize apps I want to use, like educational apps, productivity apps, and so on and so forth. And no notifications, no bubbles. Ooh, that's, again, I still remember that picture from the previous slide. So the mobile devices, to summarize, arrange your apps. Don't put the messaging app on the first screen. It will just give you more anxiety. Disable notifications. If you have a corporate phone with corporate account, if you have a hard time disabling it all the time, like some people do, disable corporate accounts on your phone as soon as you walk out of the door. Because otherwise, we never stop working. You always have that constant work mentality, and you want to avoid that as well. Don't disturb mode is something I would encourage you to use all the time. The only people who call me these days is basically those people who say you want the trip to Hawaii for two, or they keep pretending to be tax agencies and searching for me. That's like, it gives you extra anxiety. You don't want to talk to those people anyways. I hope it's actually scammers and not real tax agencies though. And again, putting your phone away on beyond the arm length helps so much, and it's just silly. If you sit in front of your laptop or computer, just put your phone farther away than your arm reach. You won't use it as much. It really works. It's simple, but it does work. When it comes to the noise control, meaningless noise is proven to be quite beneficial. There is, when people say I work from a Starbucks, they sometimes don't even wear headphones. And it's not like Starbucks is, quiet. There is noise all the time, almost like that white noise style, where, but it's meaningless noise. Nobody is distracting you. Nobody cares about you sitting there. But sometimes you still need sound support. And when it comes to sound support, there are some apps I recommend. Brain FM is a lifesaver. There is an offline function. I'm not bothered by, screaming children on the plane or, neighbors or anything like that. Brain FM helps you to focus, meditate, relax, even sleep. It's a great app. There's a free version as well. I encourage you to try that. Spotify or any mobile, any music app should be good. And My Noise if you really prefer those, with just the white noise style distractions. When it comes to the noise cancellation though, just the earplugs might be enough, or earmuffs. There is a link, article I linked in these slides called Poor Man's Boss. And when I say boss, I refer to the headphones company. Basically, instead of buying those expensive noise cancellation headphones, this person suggests to just buy those earmuffs that isolate your ears with some headphones or connect to the white noise machine. So it's an interesting article to try and to read through. And last but not least, library rules. Establish library rules within your office, with your team. Keep quiet. If you need to talk to someone, go to another room. Same way you would do it in the library. Asynchronously ping people first. Don't just, especially even if they sit right next to you. I am guilty of that. I always did that to my colleagues. Ping them first. Can we chat? And when they get back to you, only then you can actually chat with them. Think of them as well. Don't be selfish here. And if you're an expert at being pinged constantly, establish office hours for yourself, like in academia. Monday and Tuesday, you can go and ask me questions from 3 to 4 p.m. or something like that. Otherwise, your day just disappears out of the window. You don't know what's happening. But discuss those rules. Don't just assume that people will do this and follow these steps. Make sure that everyone is on board. And the project planning. Another source of the stress. Long-hanging fruits are dangerous. When someone says, "Oh, that's simple, let's just do it," right? Long-hanging fruits are even harder to plan for and implement because it's a known territory, right? The dog fooding is a complete opposite. You know your domain. You try and beyond your tool, other people's tools. Example: you're building the websites. You don't just use your application, you also try Wix, Squarespace, WordPress. You know what your customers use. You know other products. Parkinson's law, when it comes to scope creeps, really highlights the problem. Parkinson's law says that the work will fill the time allocated. So people would really try to, as you have more time, and they'll try to fit more work, and the scope creep should be eliminated at its, at origin. There is no reason, no benefit of a scope creep. And the Conway's law, again, look at your team when you plan for something. The Conway's law says that design of your system would correspond to the hierarchy in your organization. So they are actually very connected. But again, there are more sources of stress than the ones I highlighted. The long hours and overwork and productivity in general. When it comes to the long hours and overwork itself, really we are creatures of habit. We can't just say, I worked long hours yesterday, I won't work long hours tomorrow. We most likely will. The unreasonable expectations should be eliminated. If your manager expects from you to work all the time, 12 hours a day, make sure that's clear that's not the case. Otherwise, you will stress out, they will stress out as well. And again, the simple math, you can't give 150 today and 100 tomorrow. It will be 150 and 50. There is a depth you're taking from your life. There is a saying, work takes, life gives. It's again back to the life energy principle. And again, major regret of overworking. There is this book, Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Bronnie Ware, who was working with people as a nurse who were dying, she recorded their main regrets. And number one regret by everyone was, I wish I didn't work that much. So think of that. Again, there is always a due date for us. It's kind of grim, but productivity and effectiveness. Let's talk about more fun. Split hours. Again, try to avoid those. The simple math, you want to have a single chunk of time, 60 minutes, rather than 4 chunks of 15 minutes. Because you have to shift the context in between. Then use benefits. Try to use them, though. If you have vacation, take it. If you have volunteering time off, take it as well. And again, don't lose passion in your work. Change the teams maybe. Do different projects. Don't just go to another company necessarily. And again, challenge yourself. We are creative, creatures. We want to explore and try new things. And there's a great book on It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work as well that's been just recently published. Great book. So, we've talked about quite a bit today. And the good question, are there any gotchas though? And yes, there are. There are receipts for failure, as I call them. And the first is follow rules by the book. Dogmatism. Never good in life or at work or anywhere for that matter. Because, there are nuances, there are different use cases. And you are unique as well. And try not to jump into it too fast. Again, the marathon analogy. Remember that. If you do it without training, just do it a whole marathon, you're going to be, staying in bed for the next week or so. And try to establish goals. But even if it's minor goals. I want to run a marathon tomorrow, but not tomorrow, it's probably too much. But like in a month or a couple of months. And don't fight your nature. Try to reuse those habits, as I've mentioned, and use them towards your advantage. There is another great book that helps with that, an attempt to tackle those receipts for failure. Own Your Day and Your Life. It's not one of those self-help books, for that matter. This person, Avery Marcus, talks from his experience, and hopefully you can use some of his tips and tricks yourself. So there is so much information out there, though, and even like, why do we trust that information? Why would you even trust me? Hopefully you realize that I'm trying to recommend just a couple of major points, and those points would be: find a specialist. If you're searching for are fruits good for you, I know Ben Greenfield, and as a professional, I trust him, so I search are fruits good, Ben Greenfield, because I would see articles by him, and I trust him to be a good source of information. Or even scientific papers is a great source. Talk to the professionals, nutritionists, dietitians. By the way, know the difference between the two. Some are professionals from med school, some are just have certificates or don't even have any education. So think of that as well. But again, experiment. Try those tips I've shown you on yourself. The reason why I can talk about this today is because it's a holistic experience. I've tried it, it worked for me, and I hope it will work for other people as well. And again, share your experiences. And to that point, to this last point of sharing, I did not talk about a major part of habit building. And that point is what makes them stick. It's the belief system. Maybe it sounds fancy, but in reality, find inspiration. I was lucky that one of my colleagues was so great that he really helped me to think about how to change my nutrition a little bit. And it inspired me, to attempt changing what I eat and exercising. And, hopefully my life improved quite a bit in the past couple years and months. So try to find inspiration. Find a purpose yourself. Maybe you will be inspiration for someone else. You would improve their lives. Or again, think of your family, or think of your, if you want to start a family, set the purpose for yourself. And find the community. Even if it's just two of you, if it's a meetup of some sort, join the gym, find the buddies at the gym, and exercise with them. It really helps to make sure that the habit doesn't just disappear after January 1st. I love going to the gym January 1st. Seen so many people. I think I give them 2 weeks or so. After that, it just gets so empty and so nice. So belief system is essential. And here's the call for action for all of you, though. Find the purpose. I'll have to restate that. Find the purpose why you want to change. Whether it's motivators I've mentioned, it's fear, it's something changing your life, or you just want to, take it easy. But don't make your retirement to be your purpose. Some people work and they think of great days when I will retire. But if you think about it, many people retire at later ages in their life. The quality of your life won't be on the same level where you can enjoy the benefits that you would hope for. Think of the good thing to stop and consider, what would I do if I didn't have to work? And then consider, can I actually do that today? And what should I do to change my life to be able to do that thing right now? Find what you loved in the past, as a child especially. Maybe you can change your life to make it your main job. So consider that. And again, be inspired and inspire. I hope I was able to, inspire some, or I will be in the future. And it really makes you, feel good. Sharing in the volunteering has shown to, scientifically that it helps to make you happier, a lot happier. Like, just try it. Try to volunteer. Try to inspire someone. Give the feedback. Tell them they have a talent, as I've mentioned. It would help everyone. And again, as I've said, enjoy life. Work is just work. Stresses are just stresses. And just try to use the science of yourself. Try to experiment on yourself. Change one thing. It will help you change everything as you progress. And again, don't jump into it right away. Just, dip your toes slowly. Go into this. And and I really appreciate you all joining today. And thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you. We have a couple minutes so we can do Q&A. I will share the slides to make sure, to be clear. It has all the references. Have any questions afterwards? Maybe not right now because it's a kind of an interesting topic to discuss publicly. Talk to me directly or through Twitter, email, whatever you prefer. I would be very open. And I want to hear your feedback as well, what you would focus on the most. This is my first time giving this talk as well. Thank you.